Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this edition as we're back in the NFL. And this will be our first edition of NFL featured teams. And our first team we decided to do was the Tennessee Titans. So, looking at this team throughout their franchise history, they've been really good when they had McNair. They even went to a Super Bowl, almost won one, and then since McNair left, they had a great year of Chris Johnson as a rookie, CJ 2K. Since then, this team his play has been on the decline, especially after Chris Johnson left. They bought him out in 2014 when they had no idea what their team was. They didn't have Chris Johnson anymore. They didn't have a quarterback. They didn't really have anything. And it started off Mariota. He came in, last year signing DeMarco Murray. That was a great move. Drafting Derrick Henry. And their offense last year was very good, quite good at times. Other times was terrible. Defense was terrible most of the time. Other times, it was decent. So let's get right to it. So last year, as we want to review their season, so look, they lost to the Vikings in week 1. Should have won that, but just had too many, they made way too many mistakes on offense, and the Vikings defense was able to capitalize. Week 2, Mariota showed his clutchness by beating the Lions in week 2. That was a good sign. Lost to the Raiders. No offense. So the defense early on looked pretty good. Beat the Texans. Lost to the Texans. So they're 1-3. And Mariota doesn't look very good to start out. And really it's just Mariota's not that good. And you just don't know what direction they're going. And you might think, okay, it's going to be another long year. It's going to be a bad season. The defense doesn't look very good. This team was on pace to win 4 games and lose 12. But then they got hot. They beat the Dolphins. They beat the Browns. Okay, so they're now 3-3. They had a terrible loss against the Colts. And they should have won that game. They made costly mistakes, costly turnovers. Lost that game. Beat the Jaguars. Mariota was great that game. They ran all over the Jaguars in that game. Game against the Chargers, should have won that. Melvin Gordon ran all over them, and their run defense last year was one of the better run defenses in the NFL. It was actually quite good, and it's kind of for 2 reasons. One, it was naturally pretty good. Another, their passing defense was so bad that teams did not run on them very much, and they did not get that many carries on them. So maybe that's one reason. They weren't tired from defending the run. So, yep, they had bad. They were just inconsistent last year. Then they beat the Packers. That was quite a high point. But then they lost to the Colts again. They beat the Bears. Should have lost to the Bears. But then they beat the defending champions, the Broncos. And then they beat the Chiefs in Kansas City. That's really when their defense started to pick up. It started to pick up down the stretch. And really their problems with their defense was not about points. I mean, yeah, they had some few really bad games defensively. It was more about giving up big plays. That was the problem. And then Mariota gets hurt. They lose to the Jaguars. That's it, really. They were eliminated. They did beat the Texans, but it didn't matter at that point. But hey, this was a 7-9 team. This team grew. It seemed like they gained experience. They got better as the season went on. They did not make mistakes. They made less mistakes. Mariota really started to pick it up from when they played the Dolphins in week 5 all the way until when they played the Bears in week 12. Their offense was on fire. Murray was playing great. Was one of the league leaders in rushers. Derrick Henry had his moments. And they started to look like, okay, they're a really good team. And they finished the year. They won 3 out of their last 4 to finish 9-7 after being 6-6. So a tale of 2 seasons. So they started off 1-3. Then in their next 8, they went 5-3, and then they went 3 out of their last 4. So really, you go 8-4 to finish the year. That was remarkable. Play like that all year, you're gonna win 10, 11 games. That's how they should have done, since losses to the games they should have had. Should have beat the Vikings. Yep, they should have beaten the Vikings. They should have beat the Colts. All right. That's a win. So that's 2 more. That's 11 right there. and could have beaten the Jaguars. Well, so at the end of the year, they at times they look like an 11-12 win team. They look like a really good team. They started to come together at moments. And look, here's how they help their defense. Look at their defense right now. They drafted Dory Jackson. Bam, he's in right there. That's instant help. Signed Logan Ryan, one of the better cornerbacks on the Patriots. Has played on some really good Super Bowl teams. There's some experience. There's someone from winning culture right there. You signed Jonathan Cyprian, who that worked out great. You know, one of the better run stoppers in the league. Already have really good run defense. Just going to make that run defense better. So there you go. The defense is much better. And Kevin Bard, who played pretty well as a rookie, not great. I think he'll only get better. There you go. The rest of the defense, you have Avery Williamson, good solid guy, you know, pretty good at stopping the run. Just a good solid linebacker, entering his 4th year in the league. Have guys like Brian Arakpo and Derek Morgan, the pass rush, Jarrell Casey. So there you go. That's a pretty good defense right there. It's a good defense. I really think they're going to win a lot of games. I think their defense is going to be much improved. And then, here you go. The receiving was not that good. Well, they helped fix that. They drafted Corey Davis, possibly the best receiver in the draft. At the time, I was felt a little questionable about it. Did they really draft Corey Davis that high? I was a little surprised. I thought they'd get someone like Jamal Adams. I thought that would really help their defense. But they didn't. And that was okay, since they waited for Dory Jackson. That was the smartness of the Titans. And of John Robinson, who took over last year for trading that pick to the Rams. You know, the Rams were actually not that bad. You know, they're actually decent the year before their last year in St. Louis. And they swapped picks that year. And then the next year they had their pick. And guess what? They drafted 5th, even though they were almost an 11-win team. Could have made it to the playoffs. Maybe should have made it to the playoffs. So they get that out of it, and then they get a Dory Jackson, and then you sign Eric Decker, veteran. So when you bring in Eric Decker, you know, he was someone who was with Peyton Manning's teams in Denver on a really good passing offense, historically great, and played the past couple of years of the Jets, got off to a good start. So there you go. Now you have Eric Decker in right there. Delaney Walker. You still have DeMarco Murray. I think his workload will be reduced. Obviously, he's gotten a lot of carries over the past couple of years, about as much as anyone in the league over the last few years. And finally, you have Derrick Henry, was drafted out of Alabama. That's going to be a great running attack. You know, Marcus Mariota's carries went up almost double, even though he played just 3 more games. And another thing with Marcus Mariota, he's played in 27 games out of 32, which it's not a crazy amount of games to miss. But when you're talking about someone like that, Marcus Mariota has got to stay on the field. He's got to play a full, healthy season. If they do that, they'll make it to the playoffs. So the question is, can he stay healthy? Can he finish a full season? Which that will be critical to the Titans' success now and in the long term if he can play full seasons. And then you look at the line. You know, the line is very good. Taylor Lewan, one of the best left tackles in the league. Jake Cookland, who they drafted with their first-round pick in 2016. He looked good out there. Really, everybody has the grades of, according to Pro Football Focus, of in the 80s, so very good. A very good line. And I would have to say it was one of the better lines in the league. So this is not a great team. They're not dominant. You know, they're not a Super Bowl team yet. You know, they still have some holes. You know, there's no glaring weaknesses on their basic defense package. Sylvester Williams running up the middle, that might be a key concern right there. In the nickel package, no really weaknesses. You know, they have some bunch of average players on defense. Obviously, the secondary is much better. So a lot of slightly below average players. And I'm not too worried about their defense. I think this year, as we'll look ahead to next year's schedule, so let's just get to the bottom line of last year. If they would have limited the mistakes. They made too many mistakes against Minnesota, against the Colts in week 6 where they lost, or week 7. That was a bad loss. They could not finish games. That was their main weakness throughout the year. They couldn't finish games. They gave up way too many big plays. They made too many penalties. They made too many mistakes. And they were able to round out from looking like, okay, this team's on pace to win about 4 games. There was probably concerns after week 4. To now, wow, the way they played down the stretch, they won 8-4. If you play that 3 times, that's 10, 11 wins right there. So they could have won 10, 11 games last year. And they almost made it to the playoffs. Now, assuming everything still happens, Mariota still gets hurt. They lose in the first round for sure. But say Mariota's healthy, they're able to finish the year out. They could have been a playoff team. And they didn't look like they'd go very far at the beginning of the year. I thought, they might win 3 or 4 games. And I was looking right early on, but they did much better than I expected last year. And this year I thought would be the year that, like last year, they are still young, they're still inexperienced, they still make a lot of mistakes, but they're able to win some more games. And 18's the year. This year, I'm going to say, we'll get to their, as I'm looking at it right now. So, here's how they play out. Hosting the Raiders, once again. That's going to be a really tough game. The question is their passing defense, their new improved defense, ready to face off against Derek Carr, going to Jacksonville? That shouldn't be a problem. Then you're playing the Seahawks in Tennessee. That could be a huge game. Playing against the Seahawks, that's week 3. You're playing against the Seahawks. Question is their defense still as good as it is in years? That's a huge test for the offense. Come and face against the Seahawks. Then you're going to Houston. That could be a critical division game. As you go to Houston, can they beat the Texans? How well does their defense go? How well is each team at that point? Then you go back to Miami. That's a critical game playing against the Dolphins. How does your run defense do against Jay Ajayi? How good are the Dolphins? It really depends how good that matchup is. And then you got the Colts, ESPN. Okay, you're in Nashville. It's Monday Night Football. The Colts are back. They're in Nashville. The Titans could be the most relevant they are in the year. Andrew Luck's coming town. That could be their most hyped game of the year. That is a critical game for them. If they can win that game, that's going to show some growth throughout the year. Like I said, looking at the schedule right now, I don't know how other teams exactly look right now. They have not played their games yet. It will be hard to tell. But it could be interesting when it comes down to that game on October 16th, Week 6, Monday Night Football. Then you're going at Cleveland, okay? Browns, they may be a little bit better. I mean, how well can you defend Myles Garrett? Is he a rookie sensation or is he showing struggles in the league? That should be an easy win. Then you're playing the Ravens in Nashville. The Ravens, how good are they? How good is Joe Flacco? How good is their defense? How do you play against the Ravens? Bengals. Are the Bengals the team they were last year? Or is this a marquee matchup that really could decide who has home field advantage? Steelers. Okay, it's NBC. It's Thursday Night Football. It's getting close to Thanksgiving. You're playing at Pittsburgh. You're defending against Le'Veon Bell. How well does Logan Ryan or Adoree Jackson or whoever guard against Antonio Brown? This is a huge test. If they played the Steelers last year, they probably would have gotten crushed. But this year, that's going to be one of the marquee matchups of the week. Going to be one of their biggest games in Pittsburgh. How can they handle it? Then you go at Indianapolis. Then you go at Houston. Play against the Texans again. At Arizona. Are the Cardinals better? Or are they worse? At San Francisco. That should be an easy win. Then you finish up against the Rams and Jaguars. So, looking at their schedule, let's look through their first quarter. So, first quarter, Raiders, Jaguars, Seahawks, Texans. That's a hard stretch. If they can win 3 out of 3 of those games, great. If they win 2, it's not the end of the world. It's early on in the season. Then the second quarter, Dolphins, Colts, Browns, Ravens. Again, they should win about 3 out of them. They should win about 3. Again, somewhat hard. Third quarter, Bengals, Steelers, Colts, Texans. Again, some hard games right there. If they can win 2 or 3 out of them, they'll be fine. And finally, Cardinals, Niners, Rams, Jaguars. If they can win all 4, that would be great. That would make them a playoff team. So if let's say they start out, 5-3, and then down the stretch they go something like 6-2, 7-1. Look, this team is going to win 11, 12 games this year. That's how good I think they're going to be. Mariota's only getting better. This is going to be a huge step forward for him in year 3. You have a solid running game with Murray and Henry. You bring in Eric Decker to be your slot receiver. Corey Davis, maybe he turns into a rookie sensation. Good line, open up a lot of running. Then you have Logan Ryan, Adoree Jackson. They weren't there last year, replacing what really crippled them last year is giving up all those big plays. Poor defense. And your secondary is much improved. This is an improved team. Now, what they did last year is they got to get over all those mistakes they made. They got to get rid of the mistakes. They made too many penalties last year, gave up too many big plays. Mariota played a poor first quarter, was awful in the first quarter, then was great from game 5 through game 12. Finished poorly, got hurt. We need a full productive season of Marcus Mariota doing what he did in weeks 5 through 12 last year. If we can get that, great. If DeMarco Murray can play similar to what he did last year, Derrick Henry gets more of the load. Corey Davis looks like a really promising young superstar. You get production. Linebackers, Morgan and Rakpo provide a good pass rush, play like they did last year. Williamson improves. Woodyard's a role player. Kevin Bard gets better. This team is only going to get better. And right now, I think they're going to win the South. They're definitely talented enough to do that. The question is, are they a 3 seed? Really depends. The Patriots are going to get home field advantage. The question is, does the rest of the league get it? Do the Steelers get it? And really, host a playoff game, I think they will. The question is, if they go one and done, it's not the end of the world. A successful season. If they can manage to win another game, worst case scenario, what I think is going to happen, they'll likely make it to the playoffs, host 1 game. If they can get home field advantage, host 2. Maybe they go to the conference championship game. Look, this is not a Super Bowl team this year. They're going to make a pretty deep run. They could be one of the only 2 teams remaining in the AFC. New England's too talented. There's no way they can beat New England. I don't know if they can get Pittsburgh. So really, we'll see how the schedule plays out. They're my pick to win the South. They got to forget about last year. Move on to this year. Titans win the South. Titans make it to the playoffs. The question is, do they lose the wild card game at home in the first round? Or can they get it by and go to the conference championship game? They have potential this year. And look, I think by the end of the decade, they could be perennial Super Bowl contenders. It's really well built up. Good drafting, good draft picks, good free agent signing, good moves. This is the team on the rise. This is the team with the brightest future. Again, the rest of the AFC South is going to be a little bit of a challenge. Can you beat Andrew Luck? Is your defense good enough to outbeat Andrew Luck? Can you beat the Steelers? Can you win these big games? How good are you? That's the question. And the Titans, this is their year they need to step up. They need to eliminate what happened last year and just really play better, win 11, 12 games, which I think they are good enough to do. So thank you for listening to this first episode, our first featured team, the Tennessee Titans. And our next featured team will be the New York Giants. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you on our next featured episode.